guys, Tiffany here of Tiffany Gordon Cosplay with another cosplay tutorial. This time it is going to be over how I painted Fishbone, which is Jinx's weapon from the game League of Legends, specifically the Arcane skin. And if you missed how I made this out of EVA foam, you can check out the tutorial. I'll do a link in the description. And before we begin, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and we can start. For this, you're going to need Plastidip, airbrush paint, airbrush gun and compressor, masking tape, paint brushes, sealer, and of course your safety gear, and I'll have links to everything in the description. To first start off, my Fishbone prop, it comes apart in two pieces and it interlocks with male CPVC pipes, and for this you're going to want to mask off these pieces with masking tape so that way there's no Plastidip or paint, so that way your pieces can interlock correctly. And once that's done, you can then prime your piece. And for me, I used 3 heavy coats of Plastidip onto all of the pieces of this prop. You will want to wait a full 24 hours after you are done for this to fully dry before painting. And to paint this piece, I'm going to be using airbrush paint, but of course you can hand paint all of this. I just prefer airbrush painting. And I'm going to be using my Iwata Eclipse airbrush gun, as well as Createx Colors airbrush paint. Starting off with our base color, and this is going to be white. And I'm applying it for all of the pieces that are going to be later on gold. And when that's dry, I then applied pearl copper onto all of those sections. And for the whole section part, that one's supposed to be more of a coppery color, and so for this I did a mixture of pearl copper and crimson, applying it to that entire piece. The next color I'm going to be using is a mixture of jet black and gold chrome, and for this I'm going to be applying it for all of the shadowing sections. Followed by just pearl copper onto all of the highlighted areas just to make it more pop. A reminder that airbrush painting, you really want to be painting in layers to give the most realistic effect to your piece. And the Arcane Jinx skin has a very stylized paint job to the piece, so I went back by hand with a paintbrush in a mixture of white and pearl copper and leaving heavy brush strokes onto the piece that were intentional. I did this to all of the areas I wanted to highlight more, and this is really going to be very nice for camera work for your piece, as when you move your prop, the light is going to hit and reflect that section differently than the rest of the piece. Once all that paint was dry, I then masked off all of these gold sections using masking tape. And on to the next color, and for this base color we're going to be using white onto the shark's head and teeth, and for the body we're going to be using jet black onto all of the pieces. Once those paint colors were dry, I then did a mixture of aluminum and pearlescent white, mixing them together and applying it to the top of the shark head, as well as to the entire body of the piece. And you'll notice having a different base color will make the paint look different on the surface. Next, I went back with just aluminum onto the shark's head for some shadowing in sections, followed by aluminum and a jet black mix for even more shadowing. Now for the detail parts on the shark head, and the first color I'm going to be using is the Daylight Blue and Limelight Green. And for this, I used my blueprint, which I'll do a link in the description for this, but I used that, cut out the section that I wanted to apply for this, and then I airbrush painted it on. I will recommend either taping this in place or doing this part by hand, depending on the look that you want in the end. And with airbrush painting on a stencil, if it's not fully touching the surface, you will have mist go under it. So for this one, it was kind of more intentional, and I went back and did some splatter painting with a dry paintbrush to get this effect. And the color that I used for this was the Daylight Blue and Black. I followed the same process for the next color, which is magenta, for the top section of the eye paint thing. I will note that the magenta color didn't pop as much as I wanted, so I did go back by hand with a paintbrush and add a little bit more paint and clean it up just a tiny bit in the end. And that's going to be it for airbrush painting onto the shark head. The next step was to remove all of the masking tape off of this part, and then do some detail painting onto the eyeball. And for this, I started off with a jet black and a paintbrush, applying this to the outer ring section of the eye. And for the center part of the eye, I did kind of a gradient effect, starting off with white in the center, and then as I go farther towards the edge, I added more of the daylight blue into my mix, so that way it kind of gave a more glowing effect. And the last detail part on the eye was a mixture of the jet black as well as daylight blue, and then painted on the circle cross section in the middle of the eye. And for sealing the shark head, I used Createx Colors UV-LS Clear Satin, applying it by hand with a paintbrush onto all surfaces. You can also do this by airbrush gun, but I prefer to do it by hand. Now back to the body. At this point, all of the silver sections have been painted, and I went ahead and masked all of it off. And the next color that I used was white, applying it to the rest of the pieces as our base coat. And for the saddle section on the tail, I did a mixture of white, fluorescent magenta, as well as dioxazine purple to get this color, applying it to the saddle and doing a little bit of a darker mix towards the edges. And for the rest of the pieces, I did a mixture of daylight blue and jet black, applying this to the top half of the body part. And to give it more dimension, I then went in for shadowing using the jet black and phthalo blue. Now to grime it up, and for this I used fluorescent magenta to give the X-like shape on top of the piece. I will note that I put a few colors of this, so I highly recommend either painting this by hand or doing a base color of white under this section, so that way it pops a lot faster and you don't have to do as many coats. And of course I wanted to look even more messy, so I went back with a dry paintbrush and some of the paint and just flicked it onto the piece. The last part for painting this piece is the very butt part. There is actually like a red glowing section, and for this I did crimson as my base coat, followed by jet black around the edges, so it gave more of a gradient going towards the center. And once that was dry, you could then remove all of your masking tape and paper, followed by doing a little bit of detail painting using jet black around all of the edges just to make it pop that much more. And the last step for finishing our fishbone prop is to seal it, and for this again I used Createx Colors UV-LS Clear Satin. All that's left to do is put the two pieces together and it is done, and this is how my fishbone prop looks like. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. What do you think? And that, guys, is how I painted Fishbone, which is Arcane Jinxes from the game League of Legends. I hope you found this video helpful for your very own creation, and if so, let me know in the comments, as well as, is there another Jinx cosplay you want me to do? Let me know. Don't forget to like this video as well as subscribe to the channel so you can see more cosplay tutorials and painting things and whatever in between. Yeah. And a big thank you to all of my company sponsors, as well as all of my YouTube members, specifically those legendary members, and they are a huge support here for me on YouTube. It is what helps me financially continue to do this and make more tutorials for you. So consider joining, I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see you for our next cosplay tutorial. Much love, guys. Another creation like this. Yeah, this is not a good take. We'll do another one. Okay. What do you want me to do? Let me know. I'd be very